You know, planning for retirement has taught me a lot of lessons. So if you want to retire back home in Africa, wherever it is, there's a few things that you have to consider, because sometimes, you know, we watch these videos and some of you watch my videos and it looks like it is very straightforward. I can tell you right now that it is not. And the purpose of this video is to give you an insight to what it takes and if this is for you, realistically speaking. Because sometimes you watch these videos and it's very easy to get motivated and you feel like you want to do the same thing. But the reality is, it's not that simple. For example, you may think, okay, if I get a piece of land in the village, perhaps that's where I'm going to retire and it is going to be much cheaper and much easier. But I've been working out a few things that are needed on a piece of land for you to be able to sustain yourself. And it came up to about 22,000 US dollars. 22,000 US dollars. This is before you even start any projects whatsoever. It may seem a lot because it's money that has to be put together in one go. Now, for me, I've been struggling to build structures at the farm. I mean, for those of you that watched my videos, you noticed that I started off with temporary structures, and it's over 3 years now. I haven't been able to build anything. Why? Because it is very, very expensive. Of course, there are also other factors that I've lost a lot of money through being scammed and so on. But for the most part, it is not cheap. So let's start off with some basics. If you're going to live on a piece of land, you're going to need a toilet. So you're going to need a Blair toilet. But of course, if you're someone coming from the diaspora, or even if you are there on the ground in Zimbabwe, that may not be ideal, right? You want a modern toilet and a bathroom, you know? So you're going to need a septic tank. There's no two ways around that. And building a septic tank, I can tell you right now, it's going to cost you about 1,000 US dollars. That's including labor, the bricks, the cement, the transports, pretty much all of that. Roughly about $1,000. The next thing you're going to need after that is you're also going to need the toilet itself and the showers. Now, you may be saying, why would I need to build a separate toilet and shower if I can just have it in the house? Well, if this is a retirement project, you're going to need some way of generating income, right? Maybe it's horticulture or it's animal husbandry. It just depends. So you're going to need a toilet and a shower for the workers. So even the temporary workers or even the permanent workers, you're going to need that structure. There's no two ways around that one. So that in itself is going to cost you about 1,500. 1,500. Building the whole thing, including the roofing, the labor, the bricks. Yeah, I'll say about 1,500. Okay? So moving on, you are going to need your own house to live. Now, I'm not one of those people who are thinking of building one of those massive mansions, you know, in the rural areas or at the farm. Why? Because I cannot afford it. And that's the truth. I can't afford it. So in my case, I would probably go for something like maybe a 2-bedroom and an open plan kitchen. And that's about it. That's what I can afford. I cannot have these massive houses that I see some fellow Zimbabweans are doing back home. Perhaps they have quite a bit of money. And of course, it's not like I envy them or anything. I'm just doing what I can do within my own means. There's no way I'll be able to build those big, massive houses. It's going to be something so basic. And for that 2-bed house, it's going to cost in the region of 4,000 to 5,000, including the finishings. Let's move on to the next thing. You're also going to need water. So for that, you're going to need a borehole. Of course, it's not every time that you're going to drill a borehole, you're going to get water. There's going to be scamming. There's going to be quite a lot of things. But let's assume you've sited and you've drilled and the water is there. It'll cost you in the region of 4,000 plus the installations and everything. Okay, just the installations of the borehole, the cables that need to go in, the pump, and just all the cabling ready to go to the solar system. About 4,000. And then you're also going to need a tank and a tank stand. A tank stand is about 500. The tank itself is another 400. And then you want the labor, transportation, you want to make sure it's secure, it's built in place, and all of that. That's going to cost you about 1,500. So moving on, you're also going to need a solar system. Now, the solar system you're going to need is going to be something that is powerful enough to power the house and also do the activities around the farm. So you're going to definitely need a 5 kVA plus a couple of batteries for that. And that's going to cost you in the region of about 6,000 for a very, very good solar system. About 6,000, including solar panels, the connections, and all the wiring to your borehole and the wiring to the house. And obviously, if you're going to need some lights around the place, all that included, about 6,000. So as you can see, very quickly, the price is going is going up very, very high. Next, you're going to need a perimeter fence. If you can't just live in a place which, if someone has cows or goats, they can just come in and eat your crops or whatever it is, you're going to need a fence. And that fence, let's assume you have, let's say 1 hectare. It's going to cost you in the region of 4,000 for a proper installation that was going to last you for years. If you take a look at the fence that I have, it is so rubbish. I think it was bought in Mbare also, because I wasn't on the ground when it was bought. It is rubbish. I mean, you can literally go in and bend the wires. That's how bad it is. So you want a quality fence that will last you many, many years. So I think if you add everything all up, it's in the region of 23,000. So this is just a basic setup. You haven't even started the project, whether it's the horticulture or whether it is keeping chickens, goats, whatever it is. You haven't even started. So as we're looking at this 22,000, we have to start looking at preparing the land, buying the seedlings, putting down drip irrigation, and all of that's a couple of thousands too. Last time, if I recall, I was speaking to some agronomists, and they told me that if you wanted to do cabbages on 1 hectare, all the inputs would cost about 3,000. This was a few years ago, 3,000. And I know that 3,000 can easily slide into about 4,000. And this is just before you've even started making money at the farm. So that in itself, for me, is a very, 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 very steep price to start off with if you want to relocate or if you want to retire back home. It is a lot of money. The other idea I had was, okay, how about I go into eggs? Instead of broilers, go into eggs. But to buy these, they call them pullets, I think, pullets. These are hens that are ready to start laying eggs. Each costs about $10, 10 US dollars. And that 10 US dollars is, of course, one. And to have a decent business, you have to have at least 500 of these layers, at least 500. Ideally, you want to have 1,000. So let's say you go on the lower side, 500. 500 times 10, that's already 5,000 just on the chickens. 5,000. So with that 5,000 now, you're going to need to feed the chickens. And sometimes I wonder with that money, how you make a profit from that. Because if you start feeding these chickens, these eggs needs to be selling like hotcake, because majority of that money coming from the eggs is going to go to the feed. And you can't mess around with the feed, because if you don't feed the chickens properly, they won't lay eggs. So that cycle is so vicious. It needs to be done professionally. And that made me think, nah, maybe that's not a good idea. You also have to factor in the workers. They'll steal those chickens. They'll steal the eggs. And that is going to affect your profits, because it is not, the profit margins are very, very slim. So as you can see, I'm not saying this to discourage you, but I'm just saying this to make you understand that it is not a walk in the park to have a proper setup back home. So that is just starting a project, right? We have also ongoing costs. Let's say you have 2 workers. They are going to need 120 per month. And the 2 of them, that's 240 per month. And if you're doing horticulture, like what I'm trying to do, which by the way is very, very difficult. I think this is not as easy as people make it seem. The reason why I'm saying that is easily for temporary workers, you have to set up a budget of $500 per month easily, because I know you may say $500 per month, that's a lot of money. Well, think about it this way. These guys get paid $4 per day. And if you have 5 of them, I mean, do the math. That's going to be at least $500 a month. And you need to provide food for them as well. That's even before you've started making money. So if you have let's say a crop that is going to be ready for the market, let's say in 3 months, we're talking about 1,500 just on the workers. And then you need the inputs. And then you're also going to pay your temporary workers. And maybe one of those workers is your foreman. Already, we are in close to 2,000 before you've even started. So if you factor in your profits into that, it is steep. So the question that you need to ask yourself is this really for you? This retiring thing, is it really for you? This is something that you really need to ask yourself, because one of the mistakes that a lot of people do is to watch a video, maybe even the ones I make, get so inspired and think, okay, you know what? I am going to do something similar as well, without actually thinking about it. You know, there's a comment that I saw on one of my last videos where someone said, in order for you to be successful with any sort of farming, you need to set aside 5 years of just putting in money into the farming. 5 years before you can start reaping the benefits. 5 years. Now, do you see why a lot of people prefer just to get a pension and pretty much that's it? That in itself, of course, has its own issues. It has its own problems. As for me, that doesn't really work, because in 5 years, I mean, by the time you reach retirement, you're going to be working until you are 65 or whatever the retirement age is. I don't want to be working like that. That's a bit too much. I don't want to be working like that. So the retirement route wouldn't work for me, but I can understand why a lot of people would like to go for the retirement route. I remember some time ago, I had a very long debate with a childhood friend of mine. He was saying, look, going the career way is fantastic, because not everyone is geared towards or is ready to take the option where you're not sure what you're going to do tomorrow in terms of earning money. So people rather, settle for, I get a job, I just have to behave myself, make sure I do my job, and at the end of the month, I get rewarded. And sometimes I even have these type of conversations with my children. They're like, no, Dad, we just want the job. We want the job, we want to work, and that's it. I get paid. From that salary, I can save my money and then buy whatever I need to buy. Versus your route, which is set up a business, run that business, and then the profits are then used for whatever it is you want to do. These are two separate paths, and these two separate paths have challenges, but not everyone is wired to be an entrepreneur. No, because the challenges that come with entrepreneurship are huge. And sometimes I actually believe that entrepreneurship, it's something that you're born with. It's not something that it can be taught. Why? Because it's not just about the intelligence that makes you successful as an entrepreneur. No, your character, your lack of giving up, your insight, your gut feeling, all of those things. And even if you do have all those things in place, you're also going to need to be able to manage people, be calm about when certain situations arise, and that in itself is not for everyone. Some people get stressed, much, much easier than others. And some people tend to deal with stress, much better. So it just depends. So it's not one track is the right track for everyone. And this is why this retirement thing, definitely it can't be for everyone. This can't be for everyone, because as much as we want to retire back home, what it takes to retire is so much, to a point where it's almost like sometimes when I have these type of discussions, because, when I set my mind towards something, I don't give up. And people have been asking me, well, it's been a few years now, I think maybe 4 years, 3-4 years. And I haven't had any profits from anything that I tried to do back in Zimbabwe. Absolutely nothing. It has been a one-way track and the money's not coming the other way. It's been one way. Everything. Sometimes you feel like, you know what, I'm at a stage where things are now moving positive. I'm very excited. And then you look back and you say, okay, I've been doing this for a couple of months now. What have I really achieved? And is there really light at the end of the tunnel? And when you start asking yourself those questions, it is very easy to give up. It's very, very easy to give up. So it's a challenge. And I'm afraid that a lot of people are probably trying to navigate this retirement back home through pressure of seeing a lot of people posting their videos. So if you're someone that wants to retire back in Zimbabwe, it is a fantastic idea, don't get me wrong, but don't do it because Ruwa Organic is doing all these videos and he's doing it, therefore I want to do it. Or I've seen Mr. So-and-so doing it, or I've seen Mr. So-and-so doing it. It needs to come out of your own plan, what you've set your mind to. And not only that, you also have to be solid financially. And I can tell you for sure, when I came over here, it was just meant to be a couple of months, but it's been over a year. I've been here now. It's been over a year. And to just pack my bags and just go back, it hasn't been easy because on one hand, I have a lot of bills I need to pay for while I'm over here. My dream, or at least my what I was looking at was, at least if whatever I'm doing back home is making money, that can cover a little bit while I'm, doing my business. But that hasn't worked. So the expenses are expenses here in the UK, and of course trying to build back home. And as you can see, you look at I share everything with you guys. You look at the piece of land, there's nothing really on there. There's nothing, absolutely nothing. But I've been here over what? Over a year. For some of you, you'll probably be saying, well, you should have built at least a house. A lot of people say, you need to build a farmhouse. You need to build a farmhouse. You need to be on the ground. You need to be on the ground. Yes, I need to be on the ground, but living where? Where do I live? I've tried the commuting between the house and the farm. It's very expensive, even the fuel, especially if you have a big car. The fuel is expensive. And if I take what everyone is saying in the comments, that it needs to be done for 5 years, can you imagine how much money I would need to have for the next 5 years for any of these projects to come to fruition? Can you imagine 5 years of putting in money into this project? Right now, what is actually sustaining me, or at least keeping me going, is just the hope that one day this is going to become profitable. But hats off to those who have already started making profits from their projects. Hats off to those people. I mean, I see some of this on Facebook. I see some of it on YouTube, and it's amazing. People have 5,000 chickens, 10,000 broilers, and I just look and say, wow, is this even real? Because for me, no matter what I tried, it wasn't working. But of course, I'm not taking anything away from everyone who succeeded. It's probably because they have more expertise than me, and they have put in more effort, and perhaps they even had a lot of mentorship. As for me, I just went in straight into the deep end and tried to swim from there, which is very, very difficult. I'm learning on the job, and you cannot do this when it comes to farming. You can't do this when it comes to business. I'll give you a very good example. The vegetables. I thought to myself, how difficult can it be? Just dig some beds, plant the vegetables, and that's it. The rains came, the water wasn't draining properly, and all those vegetables were destroyed easily. So some of these things look very straightforward, and they look like, it's easy. But when it comes to really doing it, that's a totally different story altogether. So, like I said in the beginning of the video, you need to ask yourself, can I do this? If you do this emotionally, it's going to be very tough. And once you go in, there's no going out. As you can imagine, it's the same thing with the mortgage. A lot of people like the idea of a mortgage. So when they decide to take on the mortgage, the challenge comes now when things get tough. You look back and say, man, I wish I hadn't taken this mortgage, because I wasn't aware of all these hidden fees and all these hidden things. And, again, that's an emotional decision. And that is why every time, you talk about mortgages to people, they get very fiery. Why? Because they're very passionate. Some of them have already taken the mortgage and there's no way out. Right now, we hear that financially, all these new rules that are being put around, they can end up affecting the mortgages very, very soon. Or even those who are renting their houses, they're going to be affected very, very soon. But anyway, I'm not saying this as a negative or as a threat, but even what I am doing, it's not as straightforward. You put in the money, and then you realize that, you know what, there's no way out of this. So as for me now, I've taken a lot of steps to improve my health so that I become more productive. Now, can you see what I have to do now in order for this dream to stay alive? I have to change my lifestyle. Not that I drink or smoke. I don't drink, I don't smoke, I don't club. But even though I don't do all of those things, I have to look at how I eat. I have to look at my diet. I have to exercise just to keep my mind sharp so I can be productive to meet everything that I'm planning in life. I had a discussion with a friend of mine. He's a doctor from Nigeria, very, very good friend of mine. And we were just discussing. And so I was saying to him, look, I don't understand why my weight is not really going down. Now, you see, the type of weight I have is, the type of fat I have is visceral fat. It's fat in the inside. And that type of fat is very, very dangerous. I may look healthy on the outside, but on the inside, things are not good. And the reason why I'm saying this is because I've actually measured myself. And the fat that I have, the visceral fat, is quite a lot. So I was saying to my friend, I've been measuring myself on the scale, and even though I'm fasting, it's not really working. So he asked me a few questions. He said, what are you eating? What foods are you eating? So I said, yeah, my normal stuff, my breakfast, lunch, dinner, what's the problem? When I fast, I just have one meal. And then he says, during that meal, when you have your meal, what is it that you're eating? So I responded and I said, there's some carbs, I eat sourdough bread. I don't eat the normal bread from the supermarket, by the way. I eat sourdough bread. So I said sourdough bread. And sometimes I have oats. And then he asked me, how many slices of that sourdough bread? So I said, well, sometimes it's 2 slices because I'll be very hungry. And sometimes, I want to take a walk. I need all that energy. And the response he gave me was very shocking. And, this is something that you'd assume that, okay, we have access to the internet, then I should know all these things. Well, he said to me, since you spend majority of your time sitting behind the desk, every time you eat all these calories, right? Because they're not being burnt, they're going to be turned into fat. So you really need to change your diet, eat as little carbs as possible. And in fact, he even said you need to make your diet protein heavy and remove all the carbs. Then I asked him the question. I said, look, if I do that, where am I going to get my energy from if I need to exercise? And he told me something very exciting. He said that fat in your body, if there is no calories in your body, the body then goes to the fat for the energy. And that is how you burn the fat. And for me, that was so amazing. It was like revelation, the missing puzzle. So now I'm doing my fasting and I take some walks, but I make sure that I do not eat those things like rice, bread, and of course sadza, that kind of stuff. And potatoes. I don't eat or any of those now. So my thing now is to be as healthy as possible so I can stay sharp, stay focused. And I think this is the only way I can get to the finish line like this, because even the retirement won't be enjoyable if I've started developing diabetes and all these other, problems that come through health. So all these things all add up to planning for the retirement. It's not just the money, it's also the health, it's also the time needed to achieve all this. So it is very, very powerful. So anyway, I thought this is a video for any one of you that watches my videos to bear this in mind, that it is not as straightforward as it is, because what you see on the video is a summary of what is happening. Sometimes even other information is left out through editing, So it is tough. So ask yourself that question. Where do you want to really, really, really retire? Do you want to retire in Zimbabwe or in Africa back home? Or do you just want to carry on with your program and retire where you are? This is just a reality check. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you again in the next one. Take care.